Hey guys, real quick, I just want to mention before the video starts, when you're doing research on the company, make sure that you're looking for if they've had any previous cyber attacks or anything like that. Given the fact that you're watching this video most likely to try and do well in a cybersecurity interview, you probably want to know, if you're going through an interview process for a company, you're definitely going to want to know if they've had any previous cyber attacks or any incidents or things like that. So definitely do research on the company. And that's just one of the things I wanted to throw in here because I realized kind of last minute that I didn't mention that in the original video. But anyway, guys, thank you and enjoy the rest of the video. Hey, what's going on, you guys? Today I want to make another cybersecurity related video. You guys have been loving these videos, so I've been wanting to keep producing them to try and give you guys some help in this totally cooked job market that is the cybersecurity job market. But in this video, I basically want to talk about my tips for performing well in a cybersecurity interview. I have had many different interviews already, and I've only been in the field like 2.5 years, but as I mentioned in my last video where I kind of talked about soft skills and the importance of them, which again, I will mention them again as well in this video. I mentioned in that previous video that I've probably had like 8 to 10 different interviews, some of them short, some of them long, some of them multi-step, things like that. But I've had quite a bit of interview experience given my age, only being 25. So I feel like I actually can provide some insightful information when it comes to this area for sure. So getting right into it in terms of just tips that'll help right away and things that you'll want to do. One, you're applying for a cybersecurity job. Know the fundamentals. You should know fundamentals, network plus, security plus, things like that prior to applying for these jobs. So I'm just going to assume those things. Know your fundamentals, know the basics of how the internet works. That's going to be important because you're only going to BS your way through so much, especially with the demand lowering so much for new candidates in the market. You're going to start seeing more and more interviews, I think, be multi-step, and you're going to have HR interviews, you're going to have technical interviews, you're going to have higher-up interviews, and it's all going to be to assess whether people think you're full of crap or not, and whether they think you actually know anything. So know the fundamentals of how internet works, get those certifications. I'm assuming if you've had this interview, you've had something on your resume to prove that you are qualified for the role at least. So know your fundamentals, because if you don't know, you will get found out. And it might not be even until you're on the job. But if you're on the job, they will find it out at some point. And then if you're not who they thought you were, they will let you go. So know your fundamentals when going into the interview. Research the company for sure. I have been someone who has fallen into the trap of not doing this. I have been lazy previously, and I've just done like quick research on companies and whatnot. Do a thorough investigation on the company, what they offer, what they do, how long they've been around, who's the founder, who's the current CEO, all those kinds of things, because you never know what HR might ask you. Your technical interview isn't going to ask you who's the founder of the company, but HR will, or most likely. So to get through that HR filter, one, like I mentioned in my previous video, have your soft skills developed, make sure you work on your soft skills, and two, research that company prior to getting in that interview, because the HR person's probably going to ask you something like that just as a general gauge. Like they're not going to like quiz you on the whole company's history or what they do, but they're going to see if if you're actually genuinely interested. And someone who's interested is going to do research on the company that they're applying and interviewing for. So know your fundamentals, develop your soft skills, research the company, be prepared for HR questions about, the history of the company. Ask them questions. And this is for at any stage in the interview, whether it's your technical, whether it's the HR, whether it's for, a director or someone higher up. Ask questions in all of your interviews, because that displays curiosity, that you're genuinely interested. It's going to vary a bit. You're not going to ask the HR lady what EDR products they might use. You could ask that in your, technical interview or whatever, which I have done. So ask questions that fit depending on the interview, ask questions in each stage. It will show them genuine curiosity. And again, be prepared for multi-step. So typically all the interviews that I've had have been like one-step interviews, but how I got my last role is it was 4 steps. I had an HR interview, then I had a technical interview with my manager, then I had a more just a get to know you interview with the director of security at my company, so above my manager, and then I had a 4th technical interview with a couple members of the team that I was going to be working with. And that was the most technical, and it was also to get a feel of who I was as a person and whether they thought I would gel within the company. So be prepared for multi-step interviews, ask questions in each step of the interview, know your fundamentals, know your crap, don't BS, research the company, know a thing or two about it, be prepared for those soft questions asking about it. Be honest. This is probably the most important part when it comes to like securing the interview. To get the interview, you need to have, the accolades, and you need to have the resume and things like that. And you need to have the technical knowledge. But what's going to massively make a difference in them picking you over other people, I really feel this way, because I've taken this 100%. I do this myself, is be completely honest. If you don't know something, admit it. Do not try and BS around it. They will sniff that out. Trust me. You are going to be so much more respected if they ask you something that might be like difficult, like, hey, in this scenario, what would you do? Or what is this? And they're going to respect you so much more if you're just like, I'm going to be honest, I do not know that term, or I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I'm probably going to go ahead and research it the second we get off this call. And that's what I had to do in one of my interviews. So my technical interview with my manager was kind of more of like, what is the CIA triad? And, if you're studying Security Plus or CYSA, you know what that is with confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And you should be able to describe what each of them are, essentially. But for my technical with the couple members on my SOC team, they really grilled me. And they asked me, and it wasn't to be like mean, they would preface and be nice and say like, hey, there's no right or wrong answer. There really is like a right answer. You want to be in the ballpark for sure when they're asking you these things. You don't have to nail it on the head. But they asked me a lot of questions about like, in this scenario, what would you do with this? With this tool, what would you do with this? And one of them, I've learned about it previously, but just for the example, they asked me a question specifically on DNS tunneling. And basically, if you guys don't know what that is it's like hackers will like scramble up and encrypt malicious payloads and requests within like DNS requests. And that's how they'll get like malicious code and whatnot, payloads and things inside the organization through DNS requests, which might get overlooked. And studying for the CYSA and whatnot, I had heard the term in the past, I had studied it, but I had so much brain leak at the time of the interview, I had to admit to them in person, like my brain went blank. So I completely told them I've recognized that term. To be honest with you, I haven't had a lot of experience working with it, and that was also true, and I said I couldn't answer that at that time for them. One thing that might work is you might be able to ask them, hey, can we come back to that question later in the interview? And you might be able to come back and answer that. But that's just for an example. That's one of those things I didn't know off the top of my head or I couldn't remember. And so I admitted it in the interview, and they seemed to really respect it. They didn't, they liked that I was willing to admit I got something wrong. And that also, I've had that multiple times, actually. I had another job I interviewed for. They asked me like a port number. This guy was grilling me, and he asked me a port number, and I didn't know it. It was the first port number he asked. I told him I don't know. Just being honest, I didn't know that one off the top of my head. And he said perfect. He said that's great. That's what I wanted to hear, because if you had known that, I would have kept asking you something until you admitted to me something you didn't know. So that is 100% true, guys. In these interviews, these technical interviews where they're really grilling you, probably one of the goals is to see if you can admit that you don't know something. They're probably going to grill you until they find something that you don't know. And then if you don't know it and try and BS your way through it, they're going to smell it. And they're just going to be like, all right, this guy's not the guy. So, or gal, in that matter. So, when you're asked something that you don't know, admit it. Just be honest. And they'll probably respect you a lot, actually, for being able to admit that. And then, have real life examples prepared of just like things you've done in the past. They might ask you, what kind of projects or things you've done, what kind of incidents you've worked. Have examples of what things you've done in the past. Even if you haven't worked on a job, have examples of projects you've done in school or things like that that might be very relevant to the role. Just have examples, previous life examples of anything technical that you've done, especially if you've worked in the field previously. They might ask you, hey, what kind of alert or incident have you worked in the past? Make sure you have some of those examples ready to go for them and whatnot. And so, beyond that, again, I can just harp on it again, know the fundamentals, know tools and things like that. There are basic things that you should know, obviously, like if you go into one of these interviews and you don't know what an IP address is, I don't know what to tell you. But a lot of those things that I did mention, those things will help you a lot. Know your fundamentals, work on those soft skills, research the company, be willing to admit when you don't know something, things like that. Those things should all help you guys out in the interview process. And again, be patient. These interviews are probably going to get a lot more complicated going forward. They're going to have a lot more steps going forward as the demand for more workers is going down. If you were seeing demand go up and you were seeing so many more job openings and not enough people in the field, you would start seeing more, one-step interviews, and companies would get more desperate to hire people in. But with it being so restricted now in terms of what companies want and who they're looking for, they're gonna grill you. They're just gonna put you through so many steps of interviews. So make sure you guys definitely are prepared for that, because my interview process, my 4-step interview process for my current role lasted like a month. I was interviewing for a month. They absolutely grilled me. So, and then also, don't quit your job prior to securing the next job. Okay, so if you're trying to move companies, don't quit once you have the first interview. Quit once you have the offer and you have it in writing. So that way there's 2 things you can do. You can either lead for the new job, or you have some evidence if you want to try and get a raise with your current company. You can try and get a raise there by showing them proof of the new offer. But anyway, guys, that's what I got for this video. I didn't want to make it too long. Leave comments down below of what you guys think, and I will see you guys next time. That's all for now. Peace.